Hitting the record button there. Good evening, everybody. It's the second live learning session tonight. AP Microeconomics, we're going to talk about demand, utility theory, and supply. Hopefully, it's a tall order to do in an hour, but we'll see how it goes. Start off, for you guys that are here in person, do you all have any questions for me that you'd like me to answer?
Can we ask about the production possibilities curve?
Sure. What would you like to know?
So there was a question on the quiz for the World War I,
Yes.
and there was so let me pull it up one sec.
Yeah, I'm very familiar with the question. Let me go ahead and I can help you out with that just right off the bat. The thing that gets people with that is that the production possibility curves, and I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. So I can do that. We'll go ahead and minimize me so that I'm not recording everyone. I'm going to go ahead and stop recording here. You know what? I'll keep the picture. Okay. So the production possibility curve. It tells us how much we can possibly produce given our fixed resources, our fixed land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship. And in that question, what happened was the workers all left. A lot of people went off to war. And so what that is we now have less land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship. So we can't possibly produce as much as we want to. So if you have good A here and you have good B here, so what that curve tells us is anywhere on this curve is how much we can possibly produce with all those workers. But as soon as they left, we're not moving to a point inside the curve, because a point inside the curve says that we're inefficient, that we're not producing, we're not using all of our resources efficiently, that you have unemployed resources. Those workers are not unemployed, they just plain and simply left. So what happened was our production possibility curve shifted inward because we have less workers. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it did. Thank you.
Cool, no problem. Anything else? From anybody else is here? Okay, so what I'm going to do today, this afternoon, is I'm going to go ahead and that is I got my shirt, my economic shirt on here. There's a comic on the back, but I tried to cut and paste the comic into the presentation here, but it didn't work. So we're not going to have the comic tonight. I'll have to wear the shirt another day when I put the comic in here. But anyways, it's an economics humor. But so anyway, so what I'm going to do tonight is I'm going to go ahead and talk, like I said, talk about demand, utility theory, and supply, hopefully. I do want to go ahead and say right up front here, though, that if at any point you have trouble or not understanding something in the class, you get in touch with me, go to this class resources section. And in that, one of the things I've got is I've got my notes, very detailed, probably more detailed than what you're watching with or any of the videos you're watching or anything else. It's very just boom, 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 and it covers everything you need to know for this course. It also gives you links to videos you can watch. Jacob Clifford and Jacob Reed, ACDC, or that's Jacob Clifford, Khan Academy. There's a few others. So there's also links to other videos you can go that cover this. But also don't forget that AP Classroom has videos on every topic. So if you're struggling over a topic, anything we do in this course, and if you're a visual learner and you like to read stuff about it, then go to my notes. But if you're like, hey, I like people to show me videos on it, then go watch some of those videos. And everything you need is there. So there you go. All right. And by the way, anytime I'm doing these sessions like this, you guys are in person, feel free to jump in and ask questions at any point. I'm here to help with anything you need throughout the night. So, all right, so here we go. We're in the second unit now. The first unit is basic concepts, production possibility curve, scarcity, opportunity cost, command economies, market economies, and absolute comparative advantage. The second unit is Introduction to Supply and Demand. It is about 20 to 25% of the multiple choice test comes out of this unit. It's a lot in this unit. It's really, really important, and it is the building block for the rest of the semester. You have to be able to draw these graphs, and you have to be able to draw them correctly, and you will be drawing them a lot for me. Every free response question from this point forward is pretty much going to be drawing graphs. Okay, and they have to be properly labeled graphs. And so I'm going to show you that tonight and show you exactly how everything's supposed to be done tonight when I go through these. Okay, we'll get all the way to the end. We'll get to the market part today, but I want to just go and introduce these things today. All right, so starting off with demand. Okay, well, before we do that, we're going to be talking about markets all semester long. A market this, a market this, market this. What a market is a market is anything that brings buyers and sellers together. And the buyers are the demanders and the sellers are the suppliers. It can be Walmart, it can be eBay, it can be Amazon, it can be a guy walking down the street that opens up his jacket and says, "Hey man, you want to buy a watch?" You're a potential buyer of that watch and he's a seller. So that could be a market, right? In that market, you have the demanders or the buyers. The definition of demand, and I've got this broken out because there's like 4 different parts to it here. It's the number of units of a good or service that the buyer's demand has to be willing and able to buy. And the key here is at various prices, at a range of prices, not, oh, look, it's $3, I'll buy it. What if it was $2.50? Well, you probably buy more of it. Okay, now if it's obviously we only one, but more people would buy at $2.50 than at $3. What if it's $17, right? But we got to look at products for a range of prices. When we go to the store to buy milk, sometimes you won't buy milk because it's too expensive. But if it's $2.99 or it's $2.89, you're still going to buy it. And in fact, if it drops down to $2.60, you might buy 2 gallons of it or what have you. So there's this various range of prices, and that's really going to become really important here when we're talking about demand versus what we call quantity demand. Okay, so quantity demanded is number of units of good or service that you'll buy at a specific price. So now I'm going to give you a price, and you say I'm going to buy this many units. And now I'm going to show you the difference between here these two in a second. All right. So what this is this is what we call a demand curve. When you draw these guys, it's very, very important that you label the axes. And in this case, you could have done just P if you wanted to. And this one here, you can do Q. So always mind your P's and Q's. Check your axes labeling. You do P and Q, and the demand curve is always downward sloping. Demand down, 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 demand, down, demand. Demand is down, and we label it as D for demand. That's perfectly acceptable on the AP exam, perfectly acceptable for my class. If you don't have any labeling here, then it's not acceptable at all. So everything always has to be labeled. Downward sloping demand, axes labeled P and Q. All right. Now, this whole guy, this whole line is the demand curve. It's the number of units of this, whatever good or service this is, that this seller is willing, able to buy at all the possible prices, at a price way up here, price way down here, all the various prices we can figure out, hey, they're going to buy it. Quantity demanded is at a specific price. If I told you this is the price of the product, then you could tell me, go dot, dot, dot up to the demand curve, that this is the quantity that you would buy. And specifically, this is the quantity demanded that you would buy. Now we'll drop the D part of the demand, the QD part. We'll drop this little D right there a little later on because it'll become equilibrium. But at a specific price, we have a quantity that we want to buy. So the difference between quantity demanded and demand is the whole course at various prices. Quantity demanded is a specific price. This would be what we call a demand schedule. It shows the various prices and quantities. So if you take this, you've got price over here at a price of $3, the quantity demanded is 1. At a price of $2, the quantity demanded is 7. At a price of $1, the quantity demanded is 24. And if we were to graph this guy, then it would look something like this. P, Q, mind your P's and Q's, it would be something like this. Now, it would actually be curved. Demand curves really are curved. We call them demand curves because they are curved. But in this course, from here on, to make it easy, we pretty much always draw it as a straight line like this, unless they give you specific data. on the AP exam, they're not going to make you graph using specific data. We do have one question here that you've got to do. One of the free response questions, they give you prices and quantities. So you have to come together and find the equilibrium, but you're not going to ever do this on graph paper. All graphing in this course is done on notebook paper in pen. Now, there's no way for me to know whether you did it in pen or not because you're sending me a picture, but the actual AP exam has to be in pen. And again, if you have questions, please just jump in and ask them. Okay. It's very difficult for me to monitor chat. So if you're sending a chat, I probably will not see it because I'm trying to draw the graphs here and then keep an eye on you guys over here on the right. But anyways, demand curves are downward sloping. That's called the law. It follows the law of demand. And that makes sense. At a higher price, we're able to buy a lesser quantity. At a lower price, we're able to buy a greater quantity. So that you have that downward sloping demand. Demand is down. Right? Now, one of the things we're going to do all semester long is I'm going to teach you a graph, and then we're going to shift it. Okay? There's a very popular saying out there that shift happens. You hear it all the time. Shift happens. I saw it on a bumper sticker one time, but they misspelled shift. Anyways, but that's that. But shift happens. But it doesn't just happen. That's the thing. Is it doesn't just happen. There has to be a reason for any of these curves to shift. And so all semester long, when we're shifting these curves, there has to be a reason. For the demand curve, we're going to become the determinants of demand. It determines where the demand curve is. All right. This graph here on the left is a demand curve that is shifting to the right. And what you want to do is you want to show it shifting. You want to do an arrow like this, one or two arrows shifting like that. Notice I labeled the first one D. And then the second one, you can label it as D prime, or more popular now in books is to go D1. But you can do D and D prime, or D and D1. You can actually go D0 and D1, or you can go D1 and D2. Anything you want to do to show that there's been a change. But what you really want to do is you want to shift it and then draw these arrows showing that it's shifted. You can't go D and D. D&D is a fantasy role-playing game, not a shifting of curves. So you got to do that. The graph on the left is a decrease in demand. Why is it a decrease in demand? Well, because the demand curve moved closer to zero. It moves closer to zero, everything's moving that way, then that's a decrease in demand. Notice this one here, it moved further away from zero. That would be an increase in demand. Increase right, decrease left. Increase right, decrease left. All semester long, increase right, decrease left. Increase right, decrease left. On all of our curves. Every curve we do, increase right, decrease left, right? You want to increase your grade, right? You don't want to be left out when your grade decreases. You want to increase your grade, right? You don't want to be left out when your grade decreases. So what makes the demand curve shift? The determinants. Okay, here we go. First one, incomes. When people are richer, what do? Buy more or less? They buy more. If they buy more, then the demand curve shifts to the right, meaning they're going to buy more. If you notice that, this increase to the right, meaning they're buying a greater quantity at all prices. No matter what the price, that D1 is further to the right here than D. That we're going to buy more quantity at all prices. Consumer incomes does that. That holds true for what we call a normal good. I'm going to knock off the superior part because that's old-fashioned. The AP exam will never use that term. Okay, that holds true for most goods. Almost all goods are what we call normal goods. There are those weird ones out there called inferior good. And inferior good is one that when your income goes up, you actually buy less of it. This would be like ramen noodles. Maybe you love ramen noodles. You're like, oh, I'd buy tons of ramen noodles. But most people, ramen noodles are an inferior good. Bill Gates probably doesn't say, yes, tonight I think I'll have a bunch of ramen noodles, right? Now he might, in which case it's a normal good for him. And it could be normal for you and inferior for me and vice versa. But, used cars tend to be an inferior good. If somebody wins the lottery, they don't run out and buy a new used car, even though most millionaires drive cars that are older, because that's why they're millionaires, because they drive older cars. So normal goods, demand increases when your income goes up. And of course, if your income goes down, your demand decreases or shifts to the left. Inferior goods is the opposite. Second one is tastes and preferences. I prefer to have more. I prefer to have more. The demand curve shifts to the right. I prefer to have less. Demand curve shifts to the left. Advertising, you'll see a lot of advertising. During the Olympics, there was a lot of advertising that went on. Why were they doing that? They were trying to shift your demand for that product to the right. Next one, this one gets a little harder one. The price of a complementary good. So this is a price of a good that complements or goes with this product. Peanut butter and jelly, bacon and eggs, green eggs and ham. Those are all complementary goods. And I use the ever popular chips and salsa for my example here. And what happens is the price of one good is going to change. And it's going to affect the demand for another good. Now, so what I did here is I showed a decrease in the price of chips. Notice, this is really, this is a got you. Students miss these questions all the time. When the price of chips changed, the demand for chips did not change. The demand didn't shift. The demand curve didn't shift. What changed was quantity demanded. Anytime the price of a product changes, it changes the quantity of that product. So the way I show this is I showed my initial price here. And with that, I showed an equilibrium quantity, Q. And then what I did was I showed a new price here, and I showed a new quantity here. So when the price went down, it changed the quantity of chips. But what you do to get this right now, what to do to salsa, is you picture yourself shopping. So you have a shopping cart, and you're tootling down the aisle, and you're going do 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 do, and you come to the chips, and you go, oh wow, chips are on sale. What do? You buy a greater quantity of chips. You put more chips into the bag. I mean, into your shopping cart, right? So now you got all these chips in your shopping cart, and now what are you thinking? Oh, I need salsa. It makes you want salsa more, not more salsa. It makes you want salsa more. The lower price made you buy more chips, but now that you have the chips, you want salsa more. So that's going to be an increase in the demand for salsa. The price of chips changes the demand for salsa. And of course, this would work the other way. If the price of chips had gone up, then the demand for salsa would have decreased. I always tell students, when you get to the price of a complementary good, picture yourself in the grocery store shopping for those two products, and you'll always get it right. Okay. The next is the price of a substitute. This is a product that you're replacing one for the other. Works just like the complementary good one in the way you think about it. But instead of buying something that we're going to that goes with it, we're going to buy something that replaces it. So in this case, what happens? You go shopping, you're shopping along. Oh no, the price of cereal went up. When the price of cereal went up, you're going to buy a lesser quantity of cereal. The demand curve didn't change. Okay, all that happens is we're going to buy a lesser quantity of cereal. Well, gee, I still have to eat breakfast. Whatever will I do instead? I know I'll have Pop-Tarts. So what you get is you get an increase in the demand for Pop-Tarts. Why did you get an increase in the demand for Pop-Tarts? Because the price of cereal went up. When the price of cereal went up, we no longer want the quantity of cereal before. We're still going to eat breakfast. So we have an increase in demand for Pop-Tarts. Right? Next thing, it shifts the demand curve. Change in population. If there's more people, demand shifts to the right. If there's less people, demand shifts to the left. Just that's all it is. Change in population. And this could be, like say new markets. Maybe Walmart opens up, starts selling in Canada. They're probably already there, but they do, then that's going to open up new markets. There's going to be an increase in demand for Walmart's goods. And then last but not least is consumer expectations of price. This one's a tough one. Imagine that you found out that there was a hurricane coming through and the price of gasoline was going to jump to $6 a gallon. You would say, ooh, I need to go fill up my car tonight, right? Everyone would be rushing out to fill up the car tonight. Why? Because they expect the price of gasoline to go up. It hasn't gone up yet. They expect it to go up. So what that does is if you expect the price of gasoline to go up, mind your P's and Q's, your initial demand, it's going to cause the demand for the product to go up now. Everybody wants it now because they're expecting the price of gasoline to go up in the future. And this can be any product that we're talking about. of course, if you're looking, you're saying, oh, I expect the price to fall tomorrow, then of course you would not buy it today. So the demand curve would then shift to the left. All right, that's your determinants of demand. Flying through these guys here. If this was an in-person class, I would then spend quite a bit of time working on this. And this unit, I'm covering 3 major topics tonight alone. So I'm going to, throughout when I do these live learning sessions, I'm going to try to pick the things that I feel are going to get you the most and try to cover them in detail. Make sure you're still doing the units because I'm only have an hour to show this. All right, make sure you know the difference between a change in demand, which shifts the entire curve, okay, and a change in quantity demand, which is moving along the curve. The change in demand occurs when there's one of the and the test, the AP exam, and we're never going to say, list the 6 determinants. In fact, some books have 7 determinants. Some books have 5 determinants. Because they'll combine. They'll say price of a instead of price of a complementary and price of a substitute is 2 different. They'll call it price of a related good and call it one thing, right? So you don't have to memorize these. I know some teachers have this mnemonic device they use to memorize these 4 things. You don't have to understand them. You have to be able to read a scenario, something in the newspaper. It'll be a question that came out of a newspaper clipping or something like that. And you have to be able to say, oh, that's a determinant of demand. Because in a few minutes, we're going to do determinants of supply, which are different, and they shift a different curve. Obviously, they shift the supply curve. Okay, that's demand. Doing good for time, doing really good for time. What we're going to do now is we're going to go to marginal analysis, okay? This is actually unit 1 on the actual AP exam section. It's not unit 2. We're teaching it as unit 2 with Georgia Virtual, but a lot of teachers do that. But this is actually still a part of unit 1. It's marginal analysis and consumer choice, and we call it the utility theory of demand right there. This is what we call it here. And I'm going to get to that in just a second, why it's called utility demand. But in order to understand utility theory of demand, first thing you got to understand is that we as consumers face constraints. Most of the time it's income. Sometimes it's time. Gee, I need to get a new tire for my car, but I just haven't had time to go get it. That's a constraint. Usually it's, gee, I need a new tire, but I can't afford it right now type thing. So what happens is when we make decisions, we're trying to maximize our utility, okay? Utility is satisfaction, happiness. Everything we do, we're trying to maximize our satisfaction, our utility. You guys are taking an econ course right now because you're going to just love econ, right? No, not necessarily. You're taking an econ course because you know that it's going to hopefully lead to, a better school and therefore a better degree and therefore a better life and things like that. So you're looking forward in the future, but you're taking this econ course to maximize your utility. Ultimately, we have a fictitious measure for utility. We call it utils. Okay, you want in your life, you want oodles of utils, lots and lots of utils, right? And so that's utility. All right. Now, once you've got that, we then got to talk about different types of utility. There's total utility, which is just what it sounds like. It's total. All right. But in this, and I should have put a space here. There should have been a space right there. In economics, we very seldom worry about total. Almost all economic decisions are based on what we call the margin. And this is a very huge concept in course. Marginal is all throughout this entire semester. So if you get the concept of what marginal is today and tonight, then you'll be much better off. Marginal means change. It's the change in whatever it is you're talking about. In this case, margin utility is the change in utility. All right. And it's marginal utility comes from consuming another unit of that product. Now, every product out there has what we call the law of diminishing marginal utility. Okay, it's a law which in your science class means it always holds true. Diminishing meaning going down. Marginal means additional, and utility is satisfaction. So what this means is anything in life, as we consume more of it, the additional satisfaction decreases. Now, it may not happen right away, okay? But everything in life, picture you go to an all-you-can-eat pizza buffet. and you have that first piece of pizza, it's really good. You have the second piece, probably not as good as the first. Now, maybe you were so hungry you just want to and just inhale the first one, and the second one you enjoy a lot more. Now we're assuming all, maybe the first one was cheese. You don't like cheese as much, and the second one pepperoni. You love pepperoni. Now let's just assume they're all pepperoni pizzas. Okay, first piece of pepperoni pizza or cheese pizza, good. Second one usually not as good. Third one not as good. Fourth one not as good. You're experiencing the law of diminishing marginal utility. And this holds true for everything. I guarantee Bill Gates was not as excited about his second $1 million as he was his first million. And now he's making, all these millions and millions of dollars. He literally pays someone to give his money away. Okay. Why would he pay someone to give his money away? Because of the law of diminishing marginal utility. Everything in life experiences diminishing marginal utility. If you were to graph it, this is what it would look like. Okay, the axes we're using, we're putting quantity on the horizontal axes, and this is MU for marginal utility. Put marginal utility up here, and it could actually go up first and then come down. But if you kept on consuming, you could actually have a negative marginal utility. You say, how in the world can you have a negative marginal utility? In Bill Gates's case, it's just a hassle to make another $1 million. Oh gosh, I got to pay someone to get rid of my money. I got to have an accountant. Oh, this money's so bad, right? More for us, you and me. You eat so much that you get sick. You ate so much that you got sick. That would be a negative marginal utility, right? So it can go negative. A rational, in most, we always assume that in economics that we're rational. A rational decision maker would stop before it went negative, but we've all been made decisions that we've gone negative in marginal utility. So, all right. Now, once you got that, then you can get into what we call the utility theory of demand. All right. And what the utility theory of demand is, it starts off, we assume that we have, and when we do EKs like this is the College Board's standards. This is what the College Board says. The College Board says consumers allocate their limited income to purchase the combination of goods that maximize their utility by equating / comparing marginal utility of the last dollar spent on each good. Okay. This is their thing here. Bottom line is this. When you buy another unit of whatever it is, you're going to get some satisfaction out of it. Now, in reality, you don't get the satisfaction. If I go to the store to buy M&Ms, I'm not getting satisfaction from purchasing M&Ms. I'm actually getting satisfaction from consuming, eating the M&Ms. But we just kind of ignore that and assume that it's all part of the thing. When you consume a good, it means you're eating it. Of course, you had to buy it first. Okay. And what happens is this, right? Let's suppose that I'm going to the store and so I'm going to a restaurant. I'm going to a restaurant, and something about me is I love shrimp. Okay, I love shrimp, and the marginal utility of that shrimp meal for me is like 60 euros. Now, you don't know if that's a lot or little because you don't know what scale I'm on. Am I on a scale of 1 to 1,000, or am I on a scale of 1 to 100 or 1 to 60, right? Doesn't matter. Okay. That's my marginal utility for shrimp. My marginal utility for a hamburger is about 35. Okay. So when I go to the store, since the shrimp gives me an additional satisfaction of 60 and the hamburger gives me additional satisfaction of 35, what do you think I always buy when I go to the store, when I go to the restaurant? And the answer is the hamburger. And you go, what? You just told me that you get more additional, because remember, marginal means additional utility. You get more additional satisfaction from the shrimp than additional satisfaction of the hamburger. So why in the world do you buy the hamburger? Because I'm paying for it and I look at the price. And when we make decisions in life, you don't make decisions based on marginal utility. You actually make decisions based on the marginal utility per dollar for each dollar you spend on that. Okay. And so what ends up happening is the marginal utility per dollar that I spend on shrimp is actually less than the marginal utility per dollar that I spend on the hamburger. Why? Because shrimp might be $20 and the hamburger might be $8. Right? So when you do the math, it's a dollar sign. When you do the math, maybe I didn't, that'd be 4, and that would be 8, yeah. Okay, good. The math worked out right. 35 over 8 is greater than 60 over 20. Right? And so in fact, what happens is you end up buying the hamburger because it gives you more additional satisfaction per dollar. And we do this all the time. When people go grocery shopping, this is what they're doing. They're tootling down the aisle and they're like, and they stop and they look and they go, I really would like to have some of that. But then they look at the price and they go, oh, well, gee, I won't get that. Or they get one and then they'll put one and then they'll go, let me get a second. What they're doing is in their head, they don't know they're doing this. You're not actually doing the math. You're not actually going, okay, 20 over 60 over 20 and 35 over 8. You're not actually doing the math, but you are. You're doing the math. You're trying to figure out the margin utility per dollar, the additional satisfaction per dollar. Is it worth it? Right? Have you ever bought something and you've eaten it or you've consumed it and someone says, was it good? And you go, well, it wasn't really worth it. What do you mean it wasn't worth it? It means that the additional satisfaction you got out of it was not what you thought you were going to get out of it. And you spent money on it or time, might have just been time. Maybe someone gave you your friend gave you a ticket to a concert. And you went to a concert with them and you didn't have to spend any money, but there is an opportunity cost. Everything in life has a cost. It's just an opportunity cost. You had to go to this concert. And you're like, yeah, it wasn't really worth it. Right? You didn't spend any money on it. What do you mean not worth it? I mean, it wasn't worth the time and effort to go to the concert. Okay, so in that case, it's not margin utility per dollar, it's margin utility per time and effort. But that's, we're getting beyond the utility theory of demand when we do that, but that's okay. All right, so what happens is let's say you're buying two goods, good X and good Y. What's going to happen is if the margin utility of X margin utility of X over the price of X is greater than the margin utility of Y over the price of Y, then what you're going to do is you're going to buy more of good X. Right? Now, here's the neat thing is that when you buy more of good X, its margin utility will then diminish because of the law of diminishing margin utility. So as soon as you buy and consume good, your satisfaction goes down. So if you're in the store and at good X is M&Ms, you buy one bag of M&Ms. Now you're not as keen on buying M&Ms from the 1960s. You're not as excited to buy M&Ms anymore because you just got a bag of M&Ms, right? So what that does is it makes this fraction on the left smaller. And when do you stop? When they're two equal to each other. Okay, that's why you don't see people walking out of the store with 27 grocery baskets of stuff, because they've got everything they need and everything they want, and you also get additional satisfaction from having dollars itself. Okay, now what they're going to do for questions like this is they're going to give you a scenario like this. We got two goods. We've got good A, which costs $1. The price is $1. We've got good B, which the price is $2. They're going to give you first unit, second unit. This is like if I've consumed the 4 units of good A. Then you're going to get your total utility. Total utility is adding the margins together. And this is something, if you can learn to do this again today, then the rest of the semester is going to help you out. Margin utility is additional satisfaction. So when I consume the first unit of A, ignore B over here for now. Okay, when I consume the first unit of A, it's going to give me 10 more units of satisfaction, which means on total, I now have 10 units. When I go to buy the second unit, here, it's going to give you 8 more units. Why less than 10? Because of the law of diminishing margin utility. So it's only giving me 8 additional units of satisfaction. Total, I now have 10 plus 8, which is equal to 18. I have a third unit. It's going to give me 7 more units of satisfaction. So now I have a total of 10 plus 8 plus 7, which is equal to 25. Okay. Not only that, but when you're doing this, let me erase this real quick. When you're doing this, excuse me, sorry, went wrong over there. When you're doing this, marginal is the difference in the total. So 31 minus 25 is 6. 40 minus 36 is 4. 0 minus 10 is 10. So marginal, you can get marginal by subtracting the totals, or you can get total by adding up all of the margins. So 10 plus 8 plus 7 plus 6 plus 5 plus 4 is 40. Okay. We can do the exact same thing over here for good B. All right, we come over here to good B. We can do the exact same thing for that, and its margin utility and its totals. The numbers will work out. Okay. But what we're really concerned about right now is this margin utility per dollar. And all I did to get that is I just took the marginal utility here and divided it by the price. 10 divided by 1 is 10. 8 divided by 1 is 8. 7 divided by 1 is 7. Over here, 24 divided by 2 is 12. 18 divided by 2 is 9. 12 divided by 2 is 6. So now I know what my additional satisfaction is per dollar for good A here. It's an Australian good A. This is my satisfaction per dollar for good A. This is my satisfaction per dollar for good B. Now, what I'm going to do, and this is what the questions will do for you on the AP exam, is they're going to say you only have 10 bucks. And this is all you want to buy. It's good A and good B. How many of each do you buy? And the way you do this is you say, okay, I got 10 bucks. Well, I look at these. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to buy a unit of good B. Why? Because it gives me 12 additional units of satisfaction per dollar, where good A is only giving me 10. So now I'm down to 8 bucks. Now I'm indifferent. I'm going to buy one of each. So I'm down to 5. Now I'm going to buy this good B again because it gives me 9 versus 8 over here. So now I'm down to 3. And now I'm indifferent. I buy them both. And I'm down to 0. I've consumed all my income, which is one of the assumptions they're going to have to make, that you're going to consume all your income. So the answer is you consume 2 units of good A and 4 units of good B. You buy 2 units of good A and 4 units of good B. And what you did is you consumed them so that the additional satisfaction of good X, or A in this case, over the price of A was equal to the additional satisfaction of good B over the price of B. You met the utility theory of demand. The utility theory of demand is just what that is you continue to consume goods so that the additional satisfaction per dollar of one is equal to the additional satisfaction per dollar of the other, of the utility theory of demand. Okay, we have 20 minutes left. I'm going to finish the season. I was really worried about finishing all this stuff tonight. It's a tall tackle to do all 3 of these. This in a live classroom. This would have been altogether, because people are asking questions and things like that, it would have been probably 4 class periods with practice questions and things like that in there. So, all right, last topic, supply. Okay, supply is the sellers. The definition is the exact same definition as demand. And by the way, you don't memorize definitions in here. They're not going to get you to regurgitate the definition of demand. You have to understand the definition. This whole class is understanding concepts, understanding definitions, drawing graphs, and understanding what the graphs are that you're drawing. Okay, so supply is the exact same thing as demand. It's the number of units of a good or service that the seller is willing able to sell. So the exact same definition as demand, but we're talking about seller and sell instead of demander and buyer and demand. Okay, demander and anyways. So this is your supply curve. The supply curve is upward sloping, supply to the sky, supply to the sky. Also, if you look at supply, it actually has the word up in it, right? Supply has the word up in it. Supply to the sky. Okay. It always goes up. When you draw the supply curve, what you want to do, labeling your axes again. Always label axes, guys. When you turn anything to me, if the axis is not labeled, you lose points, period. Okay. Axes have to be labeled. Find your P's and Q's. And the supply curve is labeled S. Go ahead and label it over here. Don't label it down here. It's just, it doesn't look good. It's not wrong, but anybody that grades this is going to be going, hey, who taught that kid? Or how did that kid learn that? Because that's no textbook does that. They all label it up there. Okay. So this would be a market supply curve, supply to the sky. Okay. Supply schedules, supply curve comes from a supply schedule. So you could do the same thing we did with demand. You could come in here and you could have a price and a quantity. And what we know is that when the price is high, let's say the price is $3, they might be willing and able to sell us 1,000 when the price is 25 cents. They are willing and able to sell less. Okay, this is another gotcha for students understanding this. I might only be willing to sell 10. Think about this. If you had a lemonade stand in your front yard, okay, if you can sell your lemonade, glass of lemonade for $3 a piece, you're going to stand out there a lot longer than if you're selling for 25 cents a piece. You're willing and able. Doesn't mean anybody's going to stop. People may look, $3. That kid's trying to rip me off. I'm not buying lemonade from him, her, right? But the point being is at a higher price, you're willing and able. The able has nothing to do with are you going to sell it? The able has to do with can you stay in business? In other words, can you pay your workers? Can you pay your rent? Can you pay for your land, labor, and capital, your factors of production? If you can pay your factors of production, then you can stay in business. Unit 3 is all about this. The ableness part comes into play in Unit 3 a lot. Okay, so that's your table. To get supply schedules for a market, you just add everybody, individual person together. You get the demand curve for a market, you add all the individual buyers together. So if I, do you and me and add our demand curve together, that now becomes a market demand curve. We add a third person, it's a bigger market. We add a fourth person, even bigger market. We just keep adding them together to get the demand curve. Supply, you're adding together all of the sellers. Okay, and again, this thing here is called a supply schedule. Okay, price and quantity. Supply of the sky. Why? Because the law of supply. The law of supply says that. Oops, sorry, that's erasing. The law. Working as well. It's harder to do on my computer than it is on a whiteboard. The law of supply says that there's a direct relationship between price and quantity. Okay, for the demand curve, when the price goes up, the quantity demanded goes down. That's demand. For supply curve, for the supply curve, the relationship is direct. When the price goes up, the quantity supplied goes up. Remember, we're not saying supply goes up. We're saying when the price goes up, the quantity supplied. Just like here on demand curve, when the price goes up, the quantity demanded goes down. That's the law of demand over here versus the law of supply over here. Supply, direct relationship between price and quantity. Demand, indirect relationship between price and quantity. Okay, just like demand, there's a big difference between supply and quantity supply. Just like demand, there's a big difference between demand and quantity demand. Okay, specific point on the curve is quantity supply. All right, supply curves shift. Supply curves shift. Increase right, decrease left. Increase right, decrease left. Increase right, decrease left. We're shifting to the right here, which is an increase in supply. Why is it an increase? Because we're moving away from 0, 0. Okay, this one on here is a decrease in supply. Decrease left, decrease left, decrease left. Why? Because we're moving closer to 0, 0. Find your P's and Q's. These are labeled P and Q. I'm just making these bigger because when you're looking at the video, it may not be that big. There obviously are labeled already. P, Q, S, S1. That's a decrease in supply on the right, increase in supply on the left. I should reverse these because increase right, decrease left. So this one here should be on the right because I'm increasing. It should be the graph on the right. But it's just why I drew it. This is a decrease in supply. Okay? But when you shift the curves, you always shift to the right when there's an increase, and you always shift to the left when there's a decrease. Okay. Now we have determinants for supply, but I like to tell students that supply throws students because you're so used to being buyers. We're all used to buyers, so we understand the buying part of it. It's the selling part of it that gets us. So what I always tell students is this. Anything that makes it easier to produce or cheaper to produce shifts the supply curve to the right. If you're a seller and it's suddenly easier to produce that product, you're going to produce more. Shift to the right. If it becomes cheaper to produce it, you're going to produce more. If you're hiring labor and labor wages go down, you can now hire more labor for the same dollars, right? So you're going to supply more because you have more labor. So anything that makes it cheaper here or easier shifts the supply curve to the right. Anything that makes it harder or more expensive shifts it to the left. It can be taxes and that sort of stuff. We'll talk about these in a minute. But there are determinants for this. But in thinking about the determinants of supply, just go back to this. Easier, cheaper, shift to the right. Harder, more expensive, shift to the left. All right. So what are our determinants of supply? What shifts the supply curve? Price of resources. Okay. What do I mean by resources? In your head right now, when I say what do I mean by resources, you should be thinking factors of production. You should be thinking land, labor, or capital. Capital is machinery, right? For factors of production. Anything that makes those things cheaper means if land is cheaper, or labor is cheaper, or capital is cheaper, then that means businesses can produce more. Supply curve shifts to the right. If capital becomes more expensive, or land becomes more expensive, or labor costs go up, then the business can't produce as much. Supply curve shifts to the left. Second determinant is technology. If I have better technology, it's now easier for me to produce. Supply curve shifts to the right. If let's say that a meteor crashes through our atmosphere and takes out half of our communication tower, our communication satellites that are cruising around up there, and suddenly we can no longer have the technology, then that means that the supply of everything is going to shift to the left, right? Left, not right, correct. It's going to shift to the left. So technology, so resource prices, technology. Again, you don't memorize the determinants, you understand them. The test is not going to make you list them out. You have to understand they're going to give you a scenario and you have to be able to say, oh, that's a determinant of supply, or oh, that's a determinant of demand. And these get confusing because there's determinants of demand, there's determinants of supply, and you got to be able to figure out which one there is. And we're going to be using this all semester long. Okay, this next one is a huge one, taxes. In this course, anytime I say taxes, taxes have to do with supply. Okay, because if I want to do taxes on the consumer, I will say consumer taxes. If any question in here talks about taxes, unless it says consumer taxes or talks about taxes on the consumer or taxes on the buyer, whatever, then assume it's a supply shift. Taxes shift supply to the left. When you increase taxes, it's now more expensive for that business. They got to send money to the government. So the supply curve shifts to the left. Anytime you decrease taxes, supply curve shifts to the right. Subsidy is the opposite of a tax. Subsidy is where the government is giving a company to produce. I put it or not produce, but just don't want to. They're giving the company money to produce. Perfect example of this was the COVID vaccines. The federal government paid the drug companies to produce vaccines. Everyone they produced, they gave them money. They did that to try to do what? To increase the supply curve. They wanted that supply curve to shift to the right. Okay, everybody look at what I just drew. Everybody see it? Everybody good with that? Increase in supply? If you're shaking your head yes, then you just lost points because that's not a supply curve. I might as well have done this and started playing tic-tac-toe. And the reason being is I did not label my axes, and I did that on purpose. Without axes labeled, it's not a supply curve. It's just might as well be a tic-tac-toe board. Okay, keep that in mind. Anything you draw from me, you've got to label your axes. Okay, subsidies shift the supply. Moving on. Subsidy shifts the curve to the right. If you take away a subsidy, so let's say the government said, okay, we've got plenty of vaccines, no more subsidies for you, then the drug companies are going to start producing less. They're going to start diverting their resources to something else. They're going to divert resources to something better that's more going to earn them more of a profit. So subsidies encourage businesses to produce. Take away the subsidy, it shifts to the left. Okay. Next is expectations. Just like us, we expect the price to rise in the future. We run out and buy it right now. If a supplier expects the price to rise in the future, they don't want to sell it now. They'll wait till the price is higher. Why would they sell it to you today if they can get a higher price tomorrow? So an increase if you expect the price to rise in the future, they will actually decrease their supply now. And the number of sellers, the more sellers, supply shifts to the right, less sellers, supply curve shifts. All right, that's your determinants of supply. Now, here's the kicker. When you put them together, you now can have a market. Notice this market here. What I've got some really important things I want you to see here. Axes are labeled. Mind your P's and Q's. Supply to the sky, labeled S. Demand word downward sloping. Demand goes down, down demand. Then the kicker here is anytime you put these guys together, you have to show me your equilibrium price, dot, 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 and equilibrium quantity, dot, 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 dot. This is now a market. All right. The market is in equilibrium. You have your equilibrium price and quantity. X marks the spot, just like any good pirate treasure. X always marks the spot. So if you're drawing this guy by hand, you got to get practice doing this. Quantity and price labeled, upward sloping supply, downward sloping demand. That's not good enough because now I need to see equilibrium price and quantity. Here's the equilibrium price. Here's the equilibrium quantity. Now, what's going to happen is the next thing you're going to learn, and I'm going to just hit it real quickly because I got 7 more minutes. Next thing you're going to learn is that what happens when these guys start shifting. Let's suppose that there's an increase in population. Well, if there's an increase in population, what's going to happen is that's going to be population to determinant of demand. It's going to cause the demand curve to shift to the right. I want that in a different color. Sorry. Come on, red. Okay. It's going to cause the demand curve to shift to the right, and the equilibrium price is now going to be higher. When population goes up, prices goes up, and the quantity, quantity disappear. The quantity then increases. Notice what I did here. I drew my new dot, 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 dot to P1, and I showed the increase in price. Didn't necessarily have to show the quantity there. That's the increased demand. That's probably better. But the increase in demand caused price to increase and quantity to increase from Q to Q1. Now you can do a decrease in demand, you can do an increase in supply, you can do a decrease in supply. These are 4 different graphs that you should be able to draw, and each of these you should be able to tell me what happened to price and quantity. What are your questions? Okay, I'm going to call it an evening. That's lots and lots and lots of material. Unless anybody has any questions, I'm going to call it an evening. Keep on trucking. Email me if you have questions. I'm here for you. And I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing, stop recording. Maybe I can find it. Y'all have a good evening.
Thank you. See you.
Yep. Bye.